Have you ever felt as if each day slips by like a faded copy of the one before it? And then you soothe yourself with the line, "That's just how life is for everyone." Maybe it is, but that sentence is a sleeping pill. Because beneath that layer of normal is a quiet price you're paying. You're trading your aliveness for a sense of safety. And Nietzsche won't comfort you. He'll ask you back, as if looking you straight in the eye. Are you living or merely being valid? In his view, a person can avoid collapse, avoid failure, and still lose simply because they have never truly lived by their own will. Nietzsche opens another path for you. Not to run around searching for meaning somewhere far away, but to create it through inner strength, to revalue what you believe is right, to peel off the morality you use to hide, to stare directly at the fear that makes you shrink, and then begin building a life with sovereignty. And this is why you should stay until the end of the video. The next 10 lessons aren't the kind of pleasant advice you hear and forget. They are 10 blades cutting into what has been steering you: habits, fear, resentment, the numbness of nihilism. And especially, there's one lesson at the end that, if you miss it, you'll keep repeating the same day with the same emptiness. Are you sure you want that? Lesson 1. Reconciling the two halves of yourself. Nietzsche once said something that sounds like a curse, but is actually a key. One must still have chaos in oneself to be able to give birth to a dancing star. He's saying you must have chaos inside you, because whatever is truly alive always has something wild within it. And whatever is great is always born from a storm that has been disciplined. When Nietzsche speaks of Apollo and Dionysus, he isn't dressing things up with mythology. He's describing two fundamental currents in the human psyche. Apollo represents the light of order, a measuring rationality, planning, discipline, self-control, the need to live sensibly. Dionysus represents the instinct you often try to hide, raw feeling, art, sexuality, intoxication, that urge to break the familiar rhythm of life to touch something more vivid. If you look closely, you'll see these two aren't enemies because they exist to complete each other. The problem is that people are often pushed to one extreme, then mistake that for their true nature, when it is only a prolonged misalignment. Many people become over-Apollonian. They live like walking work schedules. They often don't realize they're running dry because their lives still look fine, and they still get praised. Yet the inner emptiness grows over time, because they've grown used to using discipline to tighten everything down. When Apollo overdoses, a person turns into a polite, responsible machine without fire. And without fire, talent becomes obligation, and life becomes a to-do list. On the other hand, some people become over-Dionysian. They live by inspiration. Today life feels beautiful, so they surge into work. Tomorrow life feels dark, so they vanish. They're creative, passionate, full of flame, but they have no framework to follow. A project begun in exhilaration can end in exhaustion. A relationship that blazes can go cold the moment the feeling fades. And a brilliant gift can become a lifelong regret if there is no structure to keep it on the long road. This is the modern tragedy. People think they are free, but they are really slaves to emotional highs and lows. Nietzsche does not side with Apollo or Dionysus. He wants you to become a harmonious whole, a whole with power. You don't need to kill pure instinct to be called good. You need to tame instinct so it serves your growth. Only when the two meet can you forge something with shape, force, and contour, a life with style. This is what Nietzsche calls the blossoming of vitality. If you want to feel this lesson through action instead of just nodding along, try a simple 7-day practice, sharp enough to reveal where you're out of sync. Each day, schedule 2 clear blocks, one Apollo block and one Dionysus block. The Apollo block lasts about 45 to 60 minutes, and you devote it to a difficult but important task, something that, done consistently, will redirect your life. Learning a skill, training your body, writing a script, building a project, or tackling a piece of work you usually avoid. The Dionysus block lasts about 30 to 45 minutes, and you devote it to controlled madness, an activity that isn't numbing entertainment, like mindless scrolling until you feel even emptier. You might play music, draw, dance, run, write an uncensored journal page, or give yourself a small adventure so your body and senses remember that you are still alive. Lesson 2. Don't live in reaction, live creatively. Once Apollo has its hands on the steering wheel and Dionysus has become fuel, you might think you'll automatically head in the right direction. But right then, a third force appears, unseen yet immensely powerful: the habit of reaction. It doesn't kill you with a single fall. It erodes you through busy days that feel hollow. And so the next question is no longer, do I have 2 halves inside me? But rather, am I driving my life, or am I being jerked around by life? Nietzsche hints at this when he says people scatter their thoughts to cease being conscious of life. You become so busy that you can no longer hear the most important question: what am I living for? You can recognize a reactive life in very ordinary signs. In the morning, you open your eyes, and your hand reaches for the phone as an unconditioned reflex, and your mind is instantly thrown into someone else's rhythm. News, notifications, drama, things that wake you up and drain you at the same time. When you're criticized, you change. When you're praised, you chase. When you see someone succeed, you feel FOMO. Your emotions swing like a pendulum, and you call it sensitivity when it resembles being led by the nose. The Stoic Epictetus once reminded us that people aren't tormented by things themselves, but by the way they see things. Nietzsche is harsher. He sees that many people don't even get the chance to see because they've already lunged into reaction before awareness can open its eyes. The creative life Nietzsche points to isn't about becoming an artist, and it's not about quitting everything to find yourself. Creativity, in a deeper sense, is when you become the one who sets the rules for your life, instead of living by the invisible rules of the crowd and of habit. Living creatively also means you dare to look at the places where you are still lying to yourself, and then dare to answer the questions you usually avoid. Try these 3 questions like 3 blades, and if you answer honestly, your life's real structure will reveal itself. What am I running from every day? If I weren't afraid, what would I do this month? And what makes me feel valuable without anyone's approval? If one of those questions just stung somewhere inside you, don't dismiss it. Write down the first thing that flashes through your mind, and if you're brave enough, share it in the comments. At what moment in your day do you see most clearly that you're no longer the one choosing, but only reacting? To shift from reaction to creativity, you don't need a grand revolution, because big revolutions are often just Dionysian bursts that burn out quickly. You need small actions. Each day, carve out a period of deliberate silence, at least 30 to 60 minutes, when you don't entertain yourself, Don't use social media. Don't engage in distracting conversation. And you simply sit with the question, if today I truly lived by what I want, what would I do? At first, this silence will feel uncomfortable, like staring into a mirror for too long. But it is in that space that you begin to hear the real voice, what Nietzsche calls radical honesty with oneself. And once you've heard that voice, take one creative action in the day, small, but with direction. Practice a skill, complete a part of a project, build a habit, cut something that's bleeding your time dry. When you do that consistently, you'll notice something strange. The outside world remains loud, demanding and tugging. But inside you, a central axis begins to form. You stop being the one who answers life. You become the one who questions life. Lesson 3. Cut resentment. Once you begin living creatively, meaning you no longer let the world jerk your mind around with petty stimuli, you will meet a far subtler obstacle, because it doesn't come from outside. It grows from within like a black root. Resentment. What makes resentment dangerous is that it often wears the mask of justice. You say you hate them because they were wrong. You say you remember the past because you have principles. But Nietzsche would ask, if you respect yourself, why do you let someone else haunt your mind for so long? Resentment is not only the memory of being hurt, resentment is turning pain into an identity. You begin living as the one who was betrayed, the one who was looked down on, the one who had an opportunity stolen. And from that moment on, your life is no longer written by you. It is written by the wound holding the pen. Nietzsche sees resentment as the fingerprint of a slave spirit because it reverses values to save wounded pride. When a person lacks the strength to act, they invent a kind of morality to turn impotence into righteousness. They don't dare rise beyond fear, so they call the courageous greedy. They don't dare love fully, so they call real love foolish. You can see this clearly in the age of social media. People don't build their lives. They build a courtroom. They live to judge, because judging is cheaper than growing up, and cruelty is easier than courage. This doesn't mean Nietzsche advises you to be nice or to overlook wrongdoing. He draws a clear line between decisive action and toxic attachment. A strong person can strike back quickly, set firm boundaries, cut ties, or seek justice, and then move on. Resentment is what drags on without an ending because it doesn't truly want resolution. It wants the right to keep hurting so it never has to change. It's like gripping a dagger and saying, "It's for protection," while the blade rusts and cuts into your own palm every day. Try pausing the video here for a few seconds, take a deep breath, and ask yourself, how long have I let this story hold power over me? Notice where it sits in your body, your chest, your stomach, your throat, and simply admit honestly, yes, it's still here. The very act of looking straight at it is already the first step in releasing the resentment you've carried for so long. If you want to cut resentment in Nietzsche's way, you must do something difficult that few people dare to do. Look directly at the secret benefits resentment gives you. Resentment gives you a sense of moral superiority, a reason to stand still, a story to tell, the permission not to risk anything because, after what I've been through, I have the right. Try a short practice, but do it seriously, as if you were operating on yourself. Write one page, without ornament. What did they do? What did I lose? What did I learn? What will I do to protect myself from today onward? You allow yourself to act for justice in the last step, but you do not allow yourself to live there anymore. Then end with a sentence, like a seal. I allow this memory to leave. And when you truly let it go, something strange will appear. Relief. A surge of energy. That is the Nietzschean victory. The kind of victory that makes you grow up immediately. Lesson 4. Revaluating all values. Once you've cut off resentment, your mind often feels lighter, as if a nail has just been pulled out of your thoughts. Yet right after that lightness, a deeper question rises, because resentment is only the symptom. The root of the illness lies in what silently decides whom you love, whom you fear, when you bow your head, and when you erupt. Your value system. Nietzsche doesn't flatter you with gentle, healing words. He says, we need a critique of moral values. The value of these values should itself be called into question. When he speaks of revaluating all values, he isn't calling you to rebel for fun. He's calling you to examine the foundation. Do the rights and wrongs you live by truly make you stronger? Or do they simply make you easier to control? Most people don't forge their own values. They inherit them from family, religion, and society. Look at modern life, and you'll see a pre-issued value chart so subtle that many mistake it for instinct. Be stable, be safe, be pleasing to others. Nietzsche sees this and offers a standard, both simple and ruthless, to test every virtue. Does this value affirm life, or does it deny life? If a belief makes you expand, become clearer, more courageous, and more willing to take responsibility, it is a life-bearing value. If a belief makes you shrink, become fearful, hate yourself, and constantly need someone outside to judge you, it is a value against life, no matter how beautifully it's wrapped in moral cloth. You'll realize that many things you once called good are sometimes just fear, legalized. Some call their silence patience, but deeper down, they fear confrontation. Some call their refusal to dream big, knowing what's enough, but deeper down, they fear failure. Nietzsche doesn't blame you for having fear. He hates the dishonesty of using morality to cover fear and then glorifying yourself for it. And to make his direction unmistakable, Nietzsche states his own standard plainly. What is good? All that heightens the feeling of power, the will to power, power itself in man. Here, power is not about crushing others. It is the state of standing more firmly, becoming more self-possessed, more vital, and more capable of creating something of value. The hardest part of revaluation is that you must suspect even what you think is your personality. So this lesson doesn't ask you to read more philosophy to become smarter. It asks you to audit your inner life like you audit your assets. Write 2 columns, values that make me feel alive and values that make me feel suffocated. In the first column, list what gives you energy, makes you dare to do difficult work, dare to speak truthfully, dare to build. In the second column, list the beliefs that make you live smaller, the shoulds that choke you, the standards that make you deny your own vitality. Then ask, the way Nietzsche would ask, who benefits if I believe this? If the answer isn't, I become stronger and more authentic, then you've just seen a chain. And once you see the chain, you've begun to be free, because from that moment on, you no longer live by borrowed values. You begin to live by values you yourself choose, pay for, and take responsibility for. Lesson 5. Become your own savior. Once you begin re-evaluating all values, you soon encounter a truth that confuses many people. If the old right and wrong no longer holds absolute authority, If the old templates no longer persuade, then who, in the end, is holding the wheel? And here, Nietzsche brings you to a threshold where many turn back, because he won't let you keep living like a child, always needing someone above to lay down laws, grant rewards, and offer salvation. Nietzsche expresses this with a sentence that shook the Western world. God is dead. He doesn't say it to provoke religious debate, but to point straight at a very modern experience, the feeling of being left behind in a universe you once clung to. When the foundation of given meaning begins to wobble, a person either falls into nihilism or steps into a rare kind of maturity, becoming their own savior. Becoming your savior isn't self-importance. It means you stop waiting for a miracle to fix your life for you. You stop waiting for someone to understand you enough to rescue you from your inner chaos. You stop hoping that one beautiful day, inspiration will return, motivation will return, and everything will fall into place on its own. Nietzsche would say that waiting like this is a form of self-betrayal, because you place your fate in the hands of what you cannot control. If you truly want to live a life with sovereignty, you must accept a painful psychological shift. No one is coming to carry you through this stretch, because this is the stretch you must walk to become the person you need. A friend of mine, Anna, was trapped in a toxic relationship for a long time. Every month she would come to us for advice on how to deal with the cruel treatment from her boyfriend. And of course, she always got the same line. Break up. He doesn't respect you. In response, she would always tell us she would do it, that she was clear-headed enough to leave. But you know what's striking? She kept going back to that man, and the crying and suffering continued month after month. Only when the last drop made the cup overflow, when she herself recognized her limit and woke up to that cruelty, did she finally have the courage to save herself from a relationship that was draining her day by day. You see, Nietzsche doesn't teach you to cut people off. He doesn't tell you to be alone. And he certainly doesn't say you can't receive support. What he wants is for you not to turn others into saviors. Becoming your own savior means you can still be held, but you understand that only you will stay with you forever. Family, friends, sooner or later, everyone leaves. Becoming your own savior begins with a sharp question. If no one comes to save me, what will I do today to save myself? And saving yourself here isn't grand declarations. It's small, non-negotiable actions, because they lay the foundation for self-respect. You save yourself when you choose to sleep on time, instead of continuing to wreck your body and then praying your mind will improve. You save yourself when you say no to a meeting that drains you, even if you fear being judged. You save yourself when you learn a new skill to escape a job that is suffocating you, instead of only complaining and repeating the cycle. These things aren't glamorous, but they create what Nietzsche considers most sacred, the feeling that I can trust myself. If you've listened up to this point, it means you've walked with me through half the journey of these 10 lessons, and perhaps somewhere in your heart, you're quietly wanting to save yourself. Consider the like button and the subscribe button as a small commitment to yourself, that you will go all the way to the end of this journey, that you won't stop at merely understanding for fun, but will stay to see whether you can become some other version of yourself. Lesson 6. Pass through nihilism. Turn emptiness into creative material. After you begin saving yourself and stop waiting for any other savior, a strange experience often appears. one many people aren't prepared for. Nihilism, the feeling that everything is meaningless. He once wrote, "Nihilism, the radical repudiation of value, meaning, and desirability." The nihilism Nietzsche speaks of isn't merely sadness, it's the feeling of looking at the things you once lived and died for and realizing they no longer have the power to wake you up. You reach a milestone, but instead of feeling complete, you feel as if you've just checked off someone else's checklist. Nietzsche clearly distinguishes two kinds of nihilism. Passive nihilism is when you feel nothing is worth it, and then you give up. Active nihilism, by contrast, is when you look directly at the collapse of old meaning and use that space to rebuild a new meaning for yourself. Look at life today. Never have there been so many options, so many opportunities, so many paths. You can learn anything, connect with anyone, and go anywhere, at least in theory. But precisely because everything is possible, the mind easily slips into a state of anything goes. Nihilism makes you lose the ability to distinguish what matters from what should be discarded. Nietzsche doesn't tell you to return to old meanings just to feel less afraid. He also doesn't tell you to fill the emptiness with random beliefs. What he wants is for you to use that emptiness as a test. If everything handed to you has lost its sacredness, what still has enough force for you to choose again with your own hands and to accept paying the price for it? That is the first step in turning nihilism into creative material. You stop asking, "Does life have meaning?" because that question is too vast and too abstract. Instead, you ask, "What meaning will I create that is strong enough to be worth living for and taking responsibility for?" If you're in a foggy zone like that, try treating the emptiness not as an enemy, but as a piece of land freshly leveled. You only need to plant a few stakes there, chosen by you. One for the body, fitness, health. One for the mind, knowledge, skills. One for the soul, honesty with yourself, small discipline, a relationship you want to make more decent. Those 3 stakes are the first supports to rebuild with, not 3 things to show off. Nietzsche doesn't promise that doing this will transform your life dramatically. He only points you to a sharp truth. The problem isn't nihilism. The problem is whether you will use nihilism to dissolve yourself or to begin again as the true creator of your own life. Lesson 7. Overcoming yourself. So how do you avoid merely existing like this and instead truly outgrow the version of yourself you are right now? Here, Nietzsche introduces a concept many people misunderstand: the will to power. He once wrote, "This world is the will to power and nothing besides." In Nietzsche's sense, the will to power is not the desire to crush others. It is one of life's most basic needs, to become stronger than it was yesterday. You can see this at every level. A tree straining toward the light, a muscle growing under weight, an idea ripening under pressure. Human beings are no different. The signs of a blocked will to power often look, on the surface, like a gentle personality. You live by permission from circumstances, from other people, from the past. You spend more energy comparing, explaining, and justifying than building. You're addicted to feeling better right now, so you scroll for another 30 minutes instead of training for 20, complain for another hour instead of sitting down to plan, and give up instead of trying again. You begin saying things like, "At this age, what can I change? It's fine, being normal is enough." Overcoming yourself doesn't mean hating who you are now, but it also means you refuse to stay here. Every limit suddenly becomes an invitation. Do you dare? Rejection, failure, shame, it still hurts, but you begin to ask, what did this experience add to me? Modern psychology has a useful concept called micro-habits. Each small action is a vote you cast for the person you want to become. For Nietzsche, that is the will to power learning to use everyday life as a training ground. You don't have to wait for a major event to wake up. Each time you choose what is hard but makes you stronger over what is easy but makes you weaker, you're voting for a new self, steadier, deeper. The will to power isn't a blazing impulse that lasts a few days. It's a durable current of small victories that matter more than whether anyone else sees them. If you want to feel the will to power clearly in your life, try setting a very specific rule. For the next 30 days, every day you do at least one thing that makes you better in the long run, even if it only takes 15 to 30 minutes. After 30 days, read your list again and ask slowly, is the person who did all this still the same as the me from 1 month ago? When your answer feels like, not quite, that's when you touch what Nietzsche always implies. Greatness is not being above others. It is no longer betraying the capacity to grow within yourself. Lesson 8. Love your fate. Here, if you only know how to overcome yourself, but don't know how to live with what cannot be reversed, you'll end up torn, wanting to move forward, yet being yanked back by the question, if only. Right here, Nietzsche offers an attitude that is both beautiful and frightening. Amor fati, a Latin phrase meaning to love your fate. Nietzsche once wrote, "My formula for greatness in a human being is amor fati, that one wants nothing to be different, not forward, not backward, not in all eternity." Nietzsche's amor fati is not resignation or surrender. It is a posture of standing up, saying, I take it all, and I will do something with everything that has happened. Think of what you hate about your life. A turbulent family, a deprived childhood, illness, appearance, foolish decisions in the past, broken relationships, times you hurt other people. The natural reaction is to want a do-over, but the brutal truth is, you can't change the past. Every time you repeat if only, you're using present energy to fight a wall that will never move. Amor fati doesn't tell you to pretend it didn't hurt. It tells you, turn back and look at what you can do with the bruise on your hand. A follower of our channel, Steve, used to deeply hate his childhood. His parents fought constantly, and for a time, he had to live with relatives. The house was always short on money. For years, he kept telling himself, if I'd been born into a different family, I'd probably be more confident. I'd have gone further. I wouldn't have been held back by poverty like this. Whenever he had to pay a large sum, the old fear would rise. Whenever he saw someone with a better starting point, Steve would feel inferior. Worse, he began using the past as a shield. My childhood was like that, so it's understandable that I'm like this now. Things only began to change when Steve realized he couldn't keep living in the same loop of poverty. He started shifting his perspective. Without that childhood, would he be able to read other people's psychology as sharply as he can now? Would he have that alertness around money, never daring to take reckless debt, keeping a habit of tracking expenses from an early age? Would he have such a clear drive to create safety for his loved ones? That was the first step of amor fati. Loving your fate doesn't mean you believe everything that happened was good. It simply means you refuse to treat any part of your life as trash. You can turn betrayal into a sharper ability to read human signals. You can turn bankruptcy into financial discipline that no school ever taught. You can turn the times you hurt others into a vow not to repeat it, and into deeper compassion for those who are lost the way you once were. If you pay attention, people with depth are often not the ones who were favored, but the ones who learned to digest what happened. They don't tell their life as a chain of injustices, but as a chain of material. To touch amor fati, you can start with a blunt exercise. Choose one event in your life that you still say, if only it hadn't happened. Make 2 columns. Column 1, what it took from me. Column 2, what it gave me. In column 2, you don't need to romanticize anything. Just write the real abilities, lessons, sensitivity, and depth you gained by going through it. Then reread it all and say one sentence. I do not forgive that, but I choose not to discard this part of my life. And that is the moment you don't merely accept your fate. You begin to love it as an indispensable part of the journey of becoming the person Nietzsche always believed you could become. Lesson 9. Would you dare live this day again infinitely? By now you've already gone far beyond the crowd, but Nietzsche doesn't stop there. He doesn't only ask, do you accept your life? He adds a more ruthless question, like an ultimate test. If your life had to repeat exactly as it is now, without missing a single detail, would you dare nod and accept it? Nietzsche expresses this through a haunting image, eternal recurrence. Imagine a demon whispering to you in your loneliest moment. Your life, exactly as it is now, will have to be lived again, repeated infinitely. No more, no less, no edits. The instant you hear that, what is your first reaction? If something tightens in your chest and you want to scream, no, Nietzsche won't judge you. He will only say, then we've learned something very important. The way you're living right now does not deserve to become eternal. Don't misunderstand. Nietzsche isn't telling you to live every day like a festival or a vacation. He's not talking about comfort, stimulation, or pleasure. He's asking about the quality of your existence. In the span of your life, has there been a moment when you truly lived by your own will? Has there been an action that, if you had to repeat it forever, you would still feel proud? If the answer is no, then the problem isn't that today is boring. It's that it is empty of meaning created by you. You don't need to panic if your current answer is no way. Nietzsche doesn't give you this test to torture you. He gives it to you as a compass. Discomfort is the needle. It tells you where your day has drifted off course. Instead of cursing today, you can do something more concrete. Pick one detail that you couldn't bear repeating 1,000 times and begin fixing it tomorrow. A very simple practice, but not an easy one. Every night before sleep, ask slowly, if today repeated infinitely, would I accept it? If the answer is clearly no, write down 2 things. One thing you want less of if tomorrow repeats, and one thing you want more of. Less than 30 minutes of mindless scrolling, more than 20 minutes of training. Less empty social chatter, more one real conversation with someone you value. Over time, if you keep this habit, you'll see the structure of your days change. You'll begin to feel that, even with fatigue and mistakes, if you had to live this sequence of days one more time, it wouldn't terrify you the way it used to. That's the sign you're moving closer to what Nietzsche calls a life worthy of affirmation. A life you don't want to flee, don't want to erase, but are willing to sign again, twice, 3 times, even with scratches. And at that threshold, the next question arises naturally for the final lesson. If every day you live is a brick for a life worth repeating, then what kind of person are you building? Lesson 10. Becoming the ÜBERMENSCH. It is precisely here that Nietzsche offers his final image, both beautiful and dangerous. The ÜBERMENSCH, often translated as Superman, but in truth closer to the human who overcomes himself than a comic book hero. He wrote, "Man is a rope stretched between the animal and the ÜBERMENSCH, a rope over an abyss." The ÜBERMENSCH is not a flawless person, not someone who never errs, never suffers. He is the one who dares to use even suffering as material to create himself. He uses the will to power to keep overcoming himself, uses amor fati to say yes to the whole journey, and uses the test of eternal recurrence to examine each day he is living. For him, life is not an exam to pass, but a work of art to be completed. You can think of the ÜBERMENSCH as a sculptor whose only raw material is himself. Each decision is a chisel strike. Each time you refuse to betray what you know is right for you, a new contour appears. But Nietzsche goes beyond the personal. The ÜBERMENSCH does not live only for himself. He knows that every step of self-overcoming contributes to the whole human species. The way he loves, works, and faces suffering creates new possibilities for those who come after. Like the first person who dares to swim across a river, from then on, the far bank is no longer impossible for the entire village. Each time you break an old limit, you open a new path in the human psyche, not only for you, but for anyone who sees you and dares to believe, I can do it too. In the end, becoming the ÜBERMENSCH is not a glorious state at the end of life, but a daily way of living. Each morning you wake up and ask, today, will I live like a draft waiting to be edited, or like someone actively carving each line into the statue called me? If you choose the second, even if you still fall, still fear, still make mistakes, then in Nietzsche's language, you have begun to leave behind the fate of standing still on the bridge and step into the only journey worthy of a human being, the journey of becoming yourself. If you've watched this far, one thing has certainly changed. You can no longer look at your life the same way. What you once called normal has now revealed its cracks. Tomorrow may still begin with an alarm clock, a familiar commute, and familiar faces. But the difference is this. From now on, each time you betray what you have already seen as right, you will hear a voice in your head. I am signing my name to the kind of person I will become. This video will end, and philosophy will fall back into the distance. What remains is one person, you and today. The final question is simple. Will you live it as a safe copy, or as a small but real step toward the person you know, deep down, you can become?